Hey, what's going on, you guys? My name is the Raptor, and this video will get everything right, no exceptions. Now, a lot of you guys know that I've made videos before talking about fights I'd like to see on Death Battle, or fights I think could happen, and some of those videos have a better success rate than others. And of course that's the case, because there really is no way to know what's going to happen in this show. Some fights are really easy to predict sometimes, some you can make educated guesses for, and some just seemingly come out of nowhere. But even though this kind of stuff is destined to fail, it's still fun to do. Today I'm going to be telling you guys some matchups that I personally think could pop up in the remaining Death Battle Season 9 lineup, just based on Death Battle trends, teases, possible commemorations, and just my own gut feelings. Because at this point, that's the best I have. Also, I believe Death Battle said they wouldn't be doing early character reveals for this first half of the season, but even if they are going to, I'd still want to make this video first because it's more fun that way. It's kinda too easy otherwise, and personally, I want to get creative, which you can too by leaving your own predictions in the comments. Alright, let's get started. So naturally we'll start off with what the next episode could be, and while we didn't get a tease for it after Boba Fett vs Predator or Excalibur vs Raiden, I already know what it is, and I'm sure a bunch of you do too. It was revealed at RTX a little while ago, so I've known for some time. But ultimately, that information isn't public on YouTube yet as far as I know, and some people won't want to know until then. I mean, people are most definitely going to talk about it in the comments anyway, and since this is just a video for predictions, I won't say what the fight is in this video. I'll just leave it at the very bottom of the description box for those who want to know ahead of time. However, I am unfortunately going to have to spoil an aspect of the next episode's fight in order to lead into my next point. It's nothing huge, but it narrows things down a bit for what it could be. So 3, 2, 1... The next fight could very possibly be live action. It works very well for that. And an upcoming live action fight is something Death Battle has hinted at, as Ben teased working with Ismahawk again this year. But this next episode being what it is throws me for a loop, because before I was thinking we were getting Jason vs. Michael as the Halloween episode in live action. Everyone wants to see that fight in that style, and it's like the main Halloween fight they've yet to do. But if this next episode is live action, we may not be getting Jason vs. Michael at all. Granted, they could still do both of these fights and just have one of them animated in some way, but it's hard to say. I still think there's a fair chance we could get this one, but if it doesn't happen, I think Mysterio vs. Scarecrow could also work as the Halloween episode. I definitely think we'll see more Marvel and DC in some way in the second half, and this one's a pretty popular choice for a creepier episode. Plus, both Spider-Man and Batman have had pretty big movies recently, so I wouldn't be surprised if that plays a factor. I'm still holding out hope that Jason vs. Michael happens, but if that's not what's happening, this would be my next guess. For all I know, I'm just gonna get everything wrong, so not like it really matters. Now, this is where things start to get a lot more up in the air. And while we don't really have a 100% guaranteed indication for what other fights could show up, I have a feeling we could be getting Gru versus Megamind. Throughout Season 9 so far, we've had multiple references to both the Despicable Me and Megamind franchises, including the Megamind presentation reference in Scarlet Witch vs. Zatanna, and the Omni-Man vs. Homelander track literally being called Diabolical Invincible Me. Not to mention that the Rise of Gru literally came out earlier this month, meaning that there's really no better time for a commemoration for this fight. They also haven't done any cartoon TV or animated movie fights yet, except for Omni-Man vs. Homelander kinda, so that could point to it happening as well. And yes, while none of these indicators confirm anything, there's still more pointing to it collectively than any other individual matchup. So for the sake of going for what's most likely, I gotta go with Gru versus Megamind. Might not happen, but I'd definitely be looking forward to it if it did. There's also the question of what the season finale in particular could be. And honestly, I really don't know how to predict it, because a lot of the season finales Death Battle has done have been very unpredictable for me. And at this point, it's hard to gauge the one that they would want to do above all else. This is actually the first season in a while where I'm pretty positive the finale won't be Galactus vs. Unicron. I think they're probably going to save that fight either for the season 10 finale or for episode 200. Could be wrong, but that's my guess. If you really want a season finale prediction from me, I guess I would go with Simone the Digger versus Kyle Rayner. Even with the massive backlash that Ben 10 vs. Green Lantern got, I am convinced that Death Battle is going to do this episode at some point. It's way too popular in the community for it to not happen, and I think it's been popular long enough that it could actually happen sooner rather than later. I mean, Omni-Man vs. Homelander came out like less than a year after Invincible became popular, meaning they would have had to start working on it pretty quickly. quickly. And I wouldn't be surprised if this was a similar case given how many people want it. I think it could work well as a season finale or even just a regular season 9 episode if they wanted to do that instead. I am in no way sure that this will happen, but I think it has a chance at very least. So at this point in the video, I feel like I really have to look at what Death Battle normally does season by season to even get in the right ballpark. So fair warning, things are going to get a lot less specific from here on out, and I'll be throwing matchups around like crazy. For example, if Mysterio vs. Scarecrow isn't happening for Halloween, we're probably still gonna get a Marvel vs. DC fight. It's not a guarantee, especially considering how much Marvel and DC was put in the first half. It's just because they've never gone through half a season without doing at least one, so it makes sense to me to look at some other options for that. In terms of what they could choose from, a big one is Ant-Man vs. Adam, which has been long awaited and I could see happening, but they might want to save that for next year to commemorate Ant-Man 3, so I don't know. There are also other commemoration options they could do, like She-Hulk vs. Supergirl, Black Manta vs. Killmonger, or hell, even Man-Bat vs. Morbius, which I guess could happen, but none of them seem like front runners, to be honest. And yes, I know Death Battle doesn't always rely on commemorations, but when trying to pick what's most likely, it's not the worst thing to look at. There are just too many comic book fight ideas to consider otherwise, let's be honest. If I really had to pick one Marvel vs. DC fight I think could happen these next few months, I would go with Black Adam vs. Apocalypse. Yes, I know Death Battle did this as a DBX like last year, but I'm not convinced that that takes it out of the running. We know Death Battle has known about this fight for quite a while now, which would give them more than enough time to decide when the right time to actually do this episode would be. And with the Black Adam movie coming out later this year, I think that kind of commemoration would be more important to them than how quick a DBX Death Battle overlap is. I do not know for a fact that this is how they're approaching their reasoning, but it's the guess I'm making nonetheless. Only time will tell if it's right or not. Similar to Marvel vs. DC, we're definitely going to get more video game characters in this season. We've literally only gotten one so far, not including the bonus episode, and they are such staples of the series that we have to be getting more. Death Battle often likes to do fighting game themed fights, and I definitely recognize that as a real possibility, but there are a few other video game fights I want to go over that I think have a particularly decent chance of happening. First up is Ash Ketchum vs. Yugi Muto. Yes, I do think it's more likely to happen than Ash vs. Lucy, especially now as it would introduce a new franchise to the show, which Death Battle said would be happening quite a bit. It's also been some time since we've had a Pokemon character, and most importantly, games from both Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Release or have been released this year. More Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime even released this year, which makes for a perfect commemoration. I know, commemorations are not guaranteed, but sometimes they're all you've got to work off of. And on that subject, the new God of War game is coming out during the second half of this season, so I wouldn't be surprised if we were awaiting Dante vs. Kratos or Kratos vs. Asura or something like that. It just seems like a no-brainer to me that Death Battle would want to celebrate a major game release, and this definitely fits that bill. And this next one might be a shot in the dark, but maybe Bowser vs. Eggman? We haven't had a Mario character in quite a while, we have Mario and Sonic themed games releasing this year, and regardless of all of that, this just feels like a contender to me. It almost feels like they could have been thinking about doing this fight for a long time and wanted to wait for the right time to do it, and it's definitely become more popular as of late. Might be more of a hunch, but that's my thinking right now. And you know what, I'll also throw in Alex Mercer vs. Cole McGrath, only because of Death Battle saying they'd be using new franchises and it's been long awaited, but other than that, I really have no reasoning for it, just wanted to bring it up. And like I said, fighting game fights are certainly on the table, but I don't have any individual predictions for that. Still holding out hope for Liu Kang versus Jago, but we'll just have to see. I also think we're in for at least a bit more anime. Again, it would just seem weird to have a whole half season with absolutely none of it. And this is where I think Death Battle has the best opportunity to introduce new franchises, like how they brought in Demon Slayer with Tanjiro and Akira with Tetsuo. I'd imagine though that they'd still want to stick with popular anime, or at least go with matchups that they know people are interested in, and one of the franchises I can think of that has that potential is Hunter x Hunter. I think now would be an appropriate time to finally bring it into the show, so I could see Akame vs. Killua happening, maybe even Gon vs. Deku happening, something like that. Saint Seiya is another one that I think they'd get to eventually, so maybe Pegasus Seiya versus Sailor Moon if they wanted to go down that route. And this one's a bit of a wild card, but I'm also thinking maybe Asta versus Meliodas could happen. Death Battle would be introducing two pretty damn popular franchises by doing this, and it's a fight that I know a good portion of the community would love to see come to life. It's a pick that's pretty hype and pretty safe at the same time, so I don't mind casting it as a prediction here. I don't know, there are a lot of good anime matchups out there that would or would not bring in new franchises, but I gotta make my picks, so those are what I'm going with. So those are some of my ideas regarding usual death battle trends, but before I finish the video, I wanted to throw out a couple more one-off predictions that I think have a chance for one reason or another. This is definitely a bit of a risk, but I'm thinking it's possible Death Battle might do another Rooster Teeth content fight this season. They've been doing one every year since season 6, and while I might be reading into that a little too much, I also don't think Death Battle wouldn't use the opportunity to promote Rooster Teeth when it can. And if I had to pick a frontrunner for this kind of fight, I would go with Sarge versus Soldier. I think it's a little too early for them to want to do Ruby versus Maka, and we just had a Ruby character last season, so this just seems like the next logical Rooster Teeth character fight, but that's just me. Or you know what, if not this, maybe Bakugo versus Yang. I feel like that one's also possible even with the recent Ruby episode. And the last one I want to throw into the mix just because is Spider-Man versus Ladybug. Like Simon versus Kyle, I am almost convinced that Death Battle is going to get to this fight at least at some point down the line, and I feel like it's been around long enough to conceivably happen soon. I don't think Death Battle would waste an opportunity to use Spider-Man again in a fight that works really well on a thematic level, and they've talked about it before too, so it could very well be in their plans. What can I say? It's just another hunch, so I'm guessing it. So guys, those are my predictions for what could happen in the second half of season 9. I know I mentioned way more fights than what could fit into the 7 unconfirmed slots, but hey, if any of them make it in, I'll be pleased as hell. Once again, this is all just speculation. Not many of these matchups have concrete proof backing them up, and I expect this video to just age horribly. But you know what? This was fun to do anyway. If you agree with what I had to say, or if you have any other predictions of your own, feel free to let me know in the comments. After all, there are a lot of matchups out there and a lot that are in the realm of possibility for happening. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a like and maybe even subscribe if you want to see more. But no matter what, thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I can't wait to see what the rest of season 9 has to offer. Peace out.